Okay, let's try this again. Another step towards being able to summon the enigma most have come to call the devil, a being which I am a branch of, Angramana in Philistine religions and Zoroastrianism in general. That will give you a more in-depth means to understand further what I speak of. I should clarify that many of these cultural references I portray here is a part of something I should not know about, as far as they know at least. That these associated traits are references to what I have been empowered with since the battle with Sargon began. I mentioned that during that first fight I had been endowed with certain additional power due to their creation of Samael. They unknowingly poured everything they believed the devil would consist of having and molded it into their vessel to usurp my authority. Before this I was a decently skilled Nephilim descendant, my power slowly growing with every journal I studied of my ancestors. Then this scenario happened. We defeated Samael at his birth and imprisoned him, but we could not destroy him because unlike the others like him that were wiped out completely by Heaven's army, Samael survived because they made him too powerful. He had developed a soul, and had shown the emotional desire for love and experienced love at some point. Not only that, but he had been made capable of defying his own maker and able to rise up against him to make war. It's a part of being the rebellious angel. When they gave him that, they wrote their own defeat as he turned against his makers and killed the foolish ones who began all this. His makers. In doing all this, whatever power and authority was bestowed to Samael was bestowed to me. Many of those powers came with agreements, pacts, deals, alignments with certain powers. At the time you were required to be listed in the Book of Life, therefore a creation of God's for you had a purpose, a designed destiny to fulfill. Every grain of sand upon that beach had a place that supported the rest of creation by just being who they are, even down to the smallest bug. Samael was not a part of this, but he was a part of God's grand design. Or was he? I am beginning to see something become a possibility here. What if stealing heaven's secrets was not Azazel and Samael go?
In the beginning of my existence, I was first created by the unwilling residual neuropathic energy of mankind's mind. Before the beginning of time and space, before the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, witch burnings, Egyptian foundation of gods and Babylonian legends of monsters with ravenous appetites, the first threads of my existence came from the concept of the Creator, and it all began with a story written in 1902 and eventually made into a novel in 1929. The maker of all things was inspired by the character of Peter Pan's issue with his shadow, and so thus, from this concept, he began the design of the concept of the adversary. I was woven in the nightmares of mankind's mind by the shadow of their fears of the unknown, in the formless dreamscape of man's fear of the darkness, and that which nashes in the dark. I first crawled forth from the cradle of my creation, but I was not self-aware yet. Only an abstract concept of the Creator and an explanation to that which could not be grasped or understood yet by man. Here in primitive man's mind I became that which was fear without name, the boogeyman. Then as time went on, many other names and attachments of description were associated to me. As man grew, so did their fear of the unknown and uncontrollable. Time progressed, and I think it was around the time of the beginning of the Dark Ages is when, by stellar alignment and lunar and solar positions, even the positions of galactic bodies merging and passing at just an opportune moment here on this world, where the fields of a massive flow of light energy coming from there, deaths of many people during the Black Plague that ran continuously like a flowing river of spiritual energy. There in the pooling energy of death and residual life essence came forth the manifested entity of their fears and beliefs of evil that took on a physical, conscious form. Until then I was present, but merely just a concept that could be compared to the character Freddy Krueger and his principal strength that lay within the fears and nightmares, but I lacked the ability of choice and was limited by the principles of their beliefs. The thoughts of some as they were dying were centered around one fact, that the only thing some found solace in was at least that which they feared even more than death and the war going on around them. The devil was not there to truly make things any worse than they already were. The clashing and pooling of stellar, lunar, celestial and residual life energies sparked my first hiccups of sentient awareness. Without form, without a living embodiment, my memories and the process of self-identification were made from the fears and nightmares of others, dreams and imagination. It did not take long before mankind began to realize that something was wrong or different about the things that occurred when they slept. They began to fear that someone or something was alive within their dreams. Soon it began to spread like wildfire, that there was something alive within the places man would go when they slept. A figure fueled by fear that seemed to thrive in their concepts of what they believed to be evil began to appear randomly within their minds of man across the world. What made it so strange at first was that the description of this entity is that it would appear in one person's dream, then across the world. In a totally different culture it would appear again using their nightmares to shape its being as it slowly went from the imagination of man and began to influence people's fears and paranoia to bring about the evil of their beliefs, that it was comprised of in an effort to bring itself to life so that it could walk among the living and be freed of the shackles of principalities. This fear created the air of nervousness and clumsiness from the time of Egyptian antiquity to the Middle Ages. Then the incidents began to become more frequent, attributed to that fear which lived within their dreams. This was around the 12th century, and after witnessing numerous members of their community seemingly taken by the affliction, this unseen enemy that lurked in their minds, the rising Catholic Church began the stoic lifestyle habits of their altruistic order of priesthood. They believed, since fear and people's beliefs in what was evil was the repetitive theme, they saw the trail of this being's effective reach, then maintaining control over these aspects would be the only way to effectively cause any sort of effect upon it. They had no idea of what I was or what happened within the dawn of my existence, but neither really did die at the time. I just acted as I saw my ability to act present itself. That is why I personified and fed on the energies of their fears, for, as far as I knew at that time, that was the only way for me to sustain myself. Through man's dreams and imagination is how I learned and gathered the basics of my consciousness and awareness of what was occurring, and I soon began to become aware of the path between right decisions of action and wrong decisions of action. A very long time passed before I realized that I was not intentionally born from evil itself, but merely by random selection of available paths. At the time, fear and evil were the dominant beliefs and subjects on people's minds when I first came into being. So naturally that was the only path I saw available, not realizing that there were other options possible. I just needed to break myself down to the core paths that defined me and rebuild to another path built by other fundamentals than fear and evil. Realizing my own dreams were coming true and that I was finally free of the shackles that bound me to the labels and ways that I had felt I was forever bound to existing by, to only be a being capable of evil, because that was what resided in the core of my design. I had begun to suspect this when I first began to feel the emotional effects of love for a woman I encountered at one point. I was astounded and confused to be feeling such things at the time, for I knew love was a feeling that only those capable of committing deeds of righteousness could feel. This led to my eventual disappearance from the covens of worshippers that had gathered, giving reverence to evil and perpetuating fear upon the earth in order to feed the flow of energy I thought was necessary to sustain my intangible being, thus sustaining my existence. Without the shackles of my own belief in myself to be only limited to evil, I began to expand my learning and became associated as an anomaly that sometimes helped bring people back from death by reconnecting their conscious mind with their bodies that were still alive and merely needed time to dilute what had almost killed them. Realizing they are not dead and thus they wake them up from their near-death experience, I became known as the Silent Angel of Evil. People associated encountering me in their dreams with the one they all had come to associate with the devil, and this figure fueled the author of the Omen movie. he started scripting the character of Damien off of an ominous encounter we had where in his dream he saw his path to success in his career, regardless of their world's opinion and the effect it might bring about on me and others. I tried to warn him and set the ominous fear the entire crew felt as they began gathering to film the movie. I had already set plans into motion, however. Another attempt to incarnate into the mortal world, and once I had gathered the subjects of my understanding between good and evil from an observation based on over 9,800 years of living through the memories of others, I was ready to, for the first time since the witch burnings of the Dark Ages, that would hunt down every attempt I made at incarnating into a mortal form and kill them and once again take on the flesh of man. Before I would do this to escape from that which I felt I was cursed to be. This time I was here to finally live free of that. I had sent my allies to possess as many as they could to promote the aspect that I was coming. I put the events of the Shroud of Turin into place so all would know the signs, giving the world a unified belief, and thus my opportunity to take the foothold I needed on the mortal world to seed myself into a newborn infant's first moments. This omen character was jeopardizing my carefully laid plans and opportunity. It was drawing the world towards contemplating what to do with such a character to turn out to be real, and the movie's intended solution was to kill him, even if it was his father that had to do it. So after the warning didn't stop them, I returned to my old methods, and the director and 6 other crew members died immediately after the movie was produced. The last I remember before the reincarnation process began was chasing down one of the actors and a subject involving singing moonstones that were the ruins of Abrixas I was discussing in their dream as that irresistible pull towards the light swept me into this lifetime. The surprise had misaligned my intended knowledge I was going to bring with me, thus corkscrewing my maturity and awareness of myself I planned to filter into my adolescent years. That was the source of the river from which I and every incarnate of Thoth that followed after the first and the last of his incarnations' life essence originated from, that which is called in the oldest tales of man's encounter with me, chaos.